Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I have 3 drugstore sunscreens that I've tested and I've tried, and I wanted to share my thoughts with you on these. Now, this is not a first impressions video. I've had these for at least a few months, so I definitely have taken the time to try them and use them and see what I think about them. And I really wanted to do this just as the average consumer. I'm not a skincare or sunscreen expert, but just someone who has tried all of these. I've tried it with and without makeup. I just wanted to let you guys know, how it performed and how it worked for me. So I do actually have clips of, how my skin looks with the sunscreen, so you can kind of see, how it looks like throughout the day. First one is the Neutrogena Ultra Sheer Moisturizing Face Serum. This has a SPF of 60, and what's nice about this one is that it's water resistant for like up to 80 minutes. So when I use this, I use about 3 to 4 pumps. And what I like is that it actually doesn't take too long to work in. After a few minutes, it's pretty well absorbed. For me, this does not leave a white cast, it's not greasy, and it actually leaves my skin feeling like that velvety, smooth kind of texture, almost like a makeup primer. That was what my initial thoughts were when I first tried this. And when I went back and looked at the packaging, I saw that it does act as a makeup primer. So I was like, okay, yeah, that makes total sense. I actually found that it does have a slight sunscreen smell just like when you first apply it, but as you work it in, it definitely goes away. And one thing I don't like, it's pretty minor, but it actually leaves my hands like with that like sunscreen feeling to it. And it's not really a big deal because you can just wash your hands. And after about like 3, probably actually closer to 4 hours, I do feel like my skin looks pretty much the same as to when I first applied it, which is great because I usually feel like by this time, which is like midday, afternoon, I am pretty like shiny around my nose and also my forehead. And with reapplying, I did notice that it does take a little bit longer to work in and get absorbed, but again, no white cast, and I actually felt like my skin has kind of like a slight dewy finish to it. It also left my skin, with that like nice velvety smooth feel to it. So at the end of the day, which for this video is more like early evening, there's actually not much oiliness going on. There is a bit of shine like around the nose and the forehead and even like in between the brows, but I didn't think it was bad at all. It's actually pretty slight, and I feel like my skin actually looks pretty good. And one thing I forgot to mention, I know that you are supposed to apply your sunscreen every 2 hours, but if I'm being honest, I'm really not that good at like keeping that 2-hour mark. By the time I remember, it's usually like 3 to 4 hours. So that's kind of like when my check-ins are. I applied it like maybe like mid-morning, like around 10 a.m. And then my midday check-in was closer to around 2 in the afternoon. And then when I say, end of the day, it's usually early evening, which is around like 6-ish. I really did try to kind of keep that same schedule when I filmed all of these. So at least if I kept it consistent, there wouldn't be too many discrepancies. So with makeup, I have no issues, applying makeup over it. And just so you know, I do wear powder foundation on a daily basis. So that's what you'll see here. Yeah, I think it does leave my skin with a really nice finish. I don't look too dry, and I actually just have this like nice glow to my face. By the afternoon, I'm definitely shiny pretty much everywhere. It's not too bad, but you can definitely tell on camera and in person. And when I wear makeup, I'll be honest, I don't really do a reapplication just because I don't want to like mess with my makeup. Now that sounds bad. I am looking to maybe get like a sunscreen mist or something that I can maybe apply over it. I haven't really figured that part out yet. So after about another 4 hours, again, this is like early evening, there's definitely a lot of shine going on. I do look oily, but my makeup actually is still on, and I think it looks pretty good. Throughout the day, I usually do use the like oil blotting sheets, but for this video, I chose not to, just so that way you could really see, what it looks like with just this product on. So the next one I have is by La Roche-Posay. It's the Toleriane Double Repair Face Moisturizer with SPF 30. The consistency with this one I definitely felt is a lot thicker, so for me it does take a little bit longer to absorb. This doesn't leave a white cast. It feels very moisturizing and hydrating, and I do like the finish of this. I feel like it leaves my skin looking very glowy and sort of like dewy looking. My skin looks very like nice and healthy. Now by the afternoon, I am seeing a bit of oiliness, more so around the nose area, but it's not too bad. And when I reapply this, it just feels thicker, like even more so than earlier. Even after a little bit of time passes and it sort of settles, I feel like there's this sort of like layer of it that's sitting on my face. So with that said, although I do like how my skin looks with this, just the heaviness of it is a little too much for me. Not really my preference, but again, this is coming from someone who is a little bit more on the oily side. Here's where actually things take a turn with this one, because after about like 30 minutes, the burning sensation or like the eye irritation is so bad for me. So as you can see here, my eyes are really watering. I couldn't even continue wearing it and I had to wash it off. When I first got this a few months ago, I experienced the same thing and I thought, okay, well maybe, you know, I just applied it a little too close to my eyes, or maybe, you know, I like touched my face and then touched my eyes, so I would try it again, but it didn't matter. Like, it still bothered me. It was just always, you know, that burning sensation was just always there in the background. Since then, I really only use this maybe like for my neck or my chest or like my arms, because I mean, I don't want it to go to waste. But for this video, I was like, you know what, let me try it again. And it just confirmed what I already knew. I didn't get that feeling earlier in the day after I first applied it. It's only after the reapplication. I don't know if maybe just there's too much chemicals going on. I mean, I really don't know the science behind it. But what I do know, it burns my eyeballs. I don't know if just my eyes are really that sensitive, but unfortunately, this just doesn't work for me. So I did try it for you guys with makeup, since I'm only really applying it, you know, the one time, but I love how my makeup looks with this under it. I mean, it just looks so healthy, so glowy. I mean, I feel like my skin is just radiating. So the only little issue with that is I know in a couple hours I'm gonna be getting really oily and it's only gonna get worse. So you can see here, I mean, I'm pretty much oily like all over, and by the end of the day, I mean, that shine is shining. Okay, I think it even looks worse in person, but you know, my makeup actually stayed on pretty well with this despite me being like super oily and greasy, so at least that's a plus. So the last one that I have here is the CeraVe Ultralight Moisturizing Lotion. This is for normal to oily skin and it has an SPF of 30. I've had this one the longest out of all three of these. As you can see, I've used it up, probably only like a few more applications before this is completely done. And when I use this, I use about 4 pumps. This really is very lightweight. It's just like applying like a light moisturizer. It doesn't have a sunscreen feel to it at all. It absorbs super quick. There's no white cast. The tube does say that it has a matte finish, and I would definitely agree with that. It actually kind of leaves my skin again with that like primer type of feeling. Maybe not as much as the Neutrogena one, but you do get like a hint of it. So in the afternoon, this is what it looks like, and I think it looks pretty good. Not a lot of shine. Very similar to how it looked after the initial application. When reapplying this, no real issues. Still feels very lightweight. There's no white cast. It maybe takes a little bit longer to absorb when comparing it to the initial application, but I mean, that pretty much happened with all of them. It doesn't really look too matte. It actually has kind of like a nice natural look to it, even with a little bit of glow. And then by the evening time, there is minimal shine like around the nose and forehead area, but that's just kind of like my usual oily areas. I do have to say that the finish on this one, at least without makeup, it's very comparable to the Neutrogena one. You know, it does a pretty good job at controlling the oil, not a whole lot of shine and oiliness to my face. Now, when wearing this under makeup, it goes on pretty well and I don't really have any problems with it. But I think you can really see here how matte my face looks. Again, I mean, I do wear powder foundation, but if you're not into that matte look, then you probably aren't gonna like this. I don't really have a problem with it because I know in a couple hours that's gonna wear off and my oiliness is gonna kick in and it'll just kind of like balance each other out. So yeah, here in the afternoon you could see I'm a little bit more oily, but it kind of just looks more glowy, and my skin, it just doesn't look as flat. I definitely like how my skin looks now at this point versus earlier. It looks healthy, it looks more youthful. And then by the evening time, you know, I do look oily in those same areas as expected. But, you know, comparing it to the La Roche-Posay one, which left me looking really greasy, I mean, this one is just, it's not bad at all. I will say though that I don't think that my makeup stayed on as well with this one, especially when comparing it to the Neutrogena one, which kind of makes sense because that one said that it does act as a makeup primer. That might not be much of a big deal, especially if you don't really wear any face makeup or just wear a little bit, but it is something that I noticed and I wanted to mention it. Now, to kind of give you my final thoughts, I'll start off with this La Roche-Posay one. It just felt a little bit thicker for my skin, especially being oily. I don't know, just a little too much for me. And then also the obvious eye burning sensation that I got with this, which was only after the reapplication. This might work for someone who is maybe not as oily and needs something very moisturizing and hydrating, and maybe someone whose eyes aren't that sensitive. But yeah, unfortunately, this one just did not work for me. So with the Neutrogena one, actually, I'm going to kind of talk about it together with the CeraVe one. I actually use both of these kind of depending what my needs are for that day. I'll reach for the CeraVe one just kind of like on an everyday basis. I think this would be good for someone who is oily, you know, if you're just going to work or, you know, stepping out to run a couple errands. I think this is a nice option. I use the Neutrogena one if I know I'm going to be more outdoors, just because of the higher SPF and also because it is water resistant. You know, you get really sweaty and stuff, especially with the hotter weather. And because I feel like my makeup stays on a little bit better, of course I'm reaching for this one if I'm having to wear makeup for most of the day. And then if I'm going for more of a natural look and not really wearing any foundation, then I will reach for the CeraVe one. I mean, of course, you know, we all have different needs, different skin types, different things we can tolerate. I hope you found this video helpful as you search for an affordable sunscreen option. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to subscribe for more videos, and until next time, bye.